Welcome. I'm Shannon Moody with Kentucky Youth Advocates. We are the backbone organization for the Kosair Charities Face It movement. We really appreciate you all tuning in today. Today, the Kosair Charities Face It movement aims to bring attention to the TEN-4 bruising rule with an awareness campaign and educational events on October 4th, or TEN-4, on TEN-4. So research from pediatricians has led to a tool known as the TEN-4 Faces P bruising rule, which outlines suspicious bruising on young children, especially on babies 4 months or younger, that is not normal and should be reported to Child Protective Services. We know that kids are kids, and sometimes they play in ways that result in minor cuts, scrapes, and bruises. These minor injuries are often found on bony areas of the body like knees, shins, elbows, and foreheads. However, there are other types of bruises that should be a red flag for possible abuse. You'll see on the screen that the acronym TEN-4 Faces P stands for. We encourage you to go to faceabuse.org/TEN-4rule to learn more about this bruising rule. Next, we'll hear remarks from Barry Dunn, President and CEO of Kosair Charities, as we look ahead to this week's TEN-4 related activities and celebrate the many local and statewide proclamations awarded in recognition of today as TEN-4 Day. Barry.
Welcome, and thank you for tuning in as we recognize today as TEN-4 Awareness Day, bringing attention to the critically important TEN-4 bruising rule and the child abuse prevention efforts led by our more than 125 community partners in the Face It movement throughout the Commonwealth of Kentucky. As a former firefighter, I use TEN-4 every day to acknowledge that I had received a message. Today, the message that we receive on TEN-4 is clear. Child abuse and neglect in Kentucky has to stop. Sadly, Kentucky has doubled the national rate of substantiated child abuse victims of abuse under age 1, and children under age 4 are at a higher risk of serious physical injury or death as a result of child abuse. Kentucky requires certain professionals such as nurses, doctors, social workers, and first responders to be trained on the TEN-4 rule within the pediatric abusive head trauma training, but it's imperative to have as many adults as possible ready to identify concerning bruises. The forensic pediatricians that Kosair Charities supports at the University of Kentucky and the University of Louisville, which include nurses, doctors, social workers, first responders, and so many others within those programs, are providing free virtual trainings this week to help identify abuse and to share tips for prevention. When our medical professionals, educators, and first responders know what concerning bruises to look for, it can make all the difference in getting that child and family connected to services. It's equally important for our families and caring community members to understand red flags so maltreatment does not escalate. In addition to the governor and the attorney general's statewide proclamations, which we will hear about momentarily, local mayors, county judge executives, and leaders across the Commonwealth are recognizing today as TEN-4 Day, including leaders in Bowling Green, Florence, Lexington, Louisville, and Owensboro, as well as Campbell, Davis, Floyd, and Kenton counties. All Kentucky adults are mandated reporters of child maltreatment, and we encourage all caring Kentuckians to learn about the rule and to commit to being the face that ends child abuse in our great Commonwealth. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Barry. This work and today, the TEN-4 Day, would not exist without the support of Kosair Charities, and we so appreciate that ongoing support for the Face It movement. As Barry shared, we've received 18 statewide and local proclamations, including from Governor Andy Beshear and Attorney General Daniel Cameron. We also received knowledge that there are proclamations that are both acknowledged in Illinois and Massachusetts. We really appreciate the forensic pediatricians that we've been working with in those states for moving forward with those proclamations with their state governors. And we also just wanted to give a thank you to Mountain Comprehensive Care, Family Enrichment Center, and Family Nurturing Center for doing a lot of the work on getting those local proclamations made for TEN-4 Day in recognition of this important event. So we will now hear remarks from Lieutenant Governor Coleman on behalf of the governor.
Hello, Team Kentucky. Take it from the mom of a 2-year-old. Parenting is not easy. Parenting babies is particularly stressful. New parents need all of the extra support available to them, whether that's from their family and friends at home or getting connected with programs in their community. Our littlest Kentuckians are at the highest risk for abuse, but maltreatment is totally preventable. It does take all of us, Team Kentucky, to pull together and help make sure that every child grows up healthy, happy, and safe from abuse. Professionals who work with newborns and babies need the tools to first recognize families who may be at risk of physical abuse. They also need to be trained to recognize the signs of physical abuse with the TEN-4 bruising rule. Individuals, organizations, and companies use their influence and resources to help parents of newborns and babies get connected to community resources like the HANDS program, WIC, SNAP, or mom or dad groups. We can all play our own part in encouraging and supporting the new parents around us, particularly in those critical first few months of parenthood. In honor of this notion of supporting families with young children and the importance of the TEN-4 bruising rule, Governor Beshear has proclaimed October 4th, 2022 as TEN-4 Awareness Day in the Commonwealth. Thanks to the Kosair Charities Face It movement for hosting a series of free trainings so professionals who work with children, from those in schools and child care facilities to our medical and dental professionals, have the tools they need to recognize pediatric head traumas and other concerning bruising on young children. We always have each other's back on Team Kentucky. Let's make sure that we are looking out for new parents and our tiniest Kentuckians.
As the Lieutenant Governor shared, we can all play a role in child protection by understanding red flags and concerning bruising. We will now hear from parent Liz Renner, a mom from Madison County, whose son was severely abused by a caregiver, resulting in one of Kentucky's child abuse pediatricians identifying it as a case of pediatric abusive head trauma. Liz.
Good morning, and thank you for having me. And before I begin, I want to reiterate a statement that Barry had mentioned, that all adults have a responsibility to report, and having tools such as the TEN-4 Faces P visual. You can see the visual posted in the Face It movement thumbnail as we speak, is so beneficial, and it helps us educate all caregivers on potential red flags. And so I'd like to share with you this journey that our family has been on the last few years. My husband, Jeff, and I, we live in Madison County, where we still live and work. 3 years ago, our family grew. I say 3 years ago, it's been 7 years ago, I am sorry. We grew by 2 more feet, and Colton Renner Slade joined us on Colton Slade Renner. I'm having a trouble today. Colton Slade Renner was born on July 17th, 2015, with a clean bill of health. After a normal hospital stay, we were discharged and sent home to start our journey into parenthood. Colton was, and still is, a beautiful child with an easygoing personality. Before Colton joined us Earthside, Jeff and I found a caregiver to care for Colton when I returned to work. And the situation had actually found us, our close friends who are more like family to us, they're very near and dear to us, who had their 5-month-old daughter, had suggested this potential caregiver. I will add that this person is somebody who had been in our lives previously as an acquaintance from social functions. And this was the perfect setup. She was somebody we knew, she was local to us, and Colton and our friend's daughter would essentially get to grow up together. And so I returned to work, and that's where this journey really begins. The first few weeks appeared no different than others. And as we wintered into October of 2015, I began noticing changes in Colton, some of those red flags. He wasn't developing fine and gross motor skills like he should. I thought his head size was on the large side to me. I addressed these concerns with friends, with family, with his pediatrician, and I was kind of assured I was being dramatic. I was being that first-time mom. And I began to think that maybe they were right, and I convinced myself maybe nothing was wrong. The caregiver that we were using also said she didn't see the things I was seeing. So I moved on with life, and life continues as normal until the first full week of November hit. And I asked for a daily report of how Colton did at the caregiver's house. And I was shocked to see her response. She said, he cried until I could get my things done, or something similar. And this was our first and only red flag. Upon questioning, she said it was only a minute or two until she could get to him, and she cuddled him and loved on him. Steph and I began to breathe, and again, life went on until about 3 or 4 days later. On November 12th, Jeff picked Colton up as normal. And when he arrived at the caregiver's house, Colton was asleep and remained asleep. And Jeff even sat and visited with them before he left. We didn't think it was weird that Colton was still asleep until we were all back at home that evening. I quickly found that my child was not feeling well. He was warm, he was fussy, he had a fever. And I thought, okay, this is our first sickness. I can handle this. I called the on-call doctor, and she advised me to treat with Tylenol and come in the morning. And I did just that. We made it through the night. On November 13th, our nightmare really starts. Colton and I visit his pediatrician, where he's determined he might have some virus. So let's do some blood work to make sure. And while we were doing blood work, Colton experienced what we now know is his first seizure. His arm was repeatedly twitching, and panic began to ensue. I called Jess to meet him at our doctor's office immediately. Another visit with Colton's doctor, she found that his soft spot was now bulging, and with his twitching episode, she decided to be safe and send us on to UK. We arrived at the University of Kentucky Children's Hospital, where we began the tests. Most tests are coming back normal, except his lumbar puncture. This test led to the CT scan, which revealed hemorrhaging on his brain. I'm sorry. Not long after that, we were admitted to the pediatric intensive care unit, where we remained for 2 weeks. Colton was placed into a coma to calm the seizures and run further tests. And it was revealed that Colton had retinal hemorrhaging in all layers of both of eyes. His MRI also revealed that this wasn't the first time that Colton had been hurt. I remember the first time a doctor told me he was hurt. He said, "Who hurt your baby?" And Jeff and I were shocked. I was shocked because honestly, I thought Colton was sick up until that point. Jeff and I spent the next few days with state police, detectives, forensic doctors, and CPS. And appropriately, these individuals also spoke with the caregiver and their other family, our close friends that attended the same caregiver. The other family came to be evaluated at UK, and after a long night for them, it was determined that their 8-month-old daughter had 2 breaks in her leg dating back at various times. Our fears were confirmed. The person we thought we knew and trusted hurt our precious children. The caregiver was interviewed, and she admitted to shaking my child on 3 separate occasions. Her reason was due to him crying, and he was on a feeding schedule of sorts. And after the justice system went to work, she was sentenced for 15 years for Colton's injuries and 10 for our friend's daughter to be served consecutively. I'm here to share with you what the effects of abusive head trauma are. We hear about it in trainings, but to live it, Colton was on death's door, and he wasn't supposed to have any quality of life if he survived. A resident used the words once, non-purposeful, and I'm fortunate that this isn't quite the case for our Colton. Abusive head trauma has Colton in countless therapies a week, occupational, physical, speech, vision. And not only does he have a traumatic brain injury, he now has a history of epilepsy. It was controlled on a various concoction of medications and diets. He has vision impairments, he has low tone, and he is considered a high-risk child. These words wouldn't be in my vocabulary had one person decided to take a short break or to be educated on how to care for children. To place children she could have placed Colton in a safe spot, and she could have gone and gotten a drink or stepped outside for a moment, something other than physically harming two children. I don't necessarily want to be here sharing this with you today, but I am. And I hope that Colton's story is something that you can take back and share with your friends, your family, your colleagues, and say, I heard this little boy's story of survival of abusive head trauma, and it could have all been prevented. Colton was hurt on someone's conscious decision, and in the words of Dr. Seuss, I hope that this is something that you all can walk away out of here today. Unless someone like you cares a whole awful lot, nothing's going to get better. It's not. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Liz, for sharing your family story and for emphasizing the tools to help ensure no family has to experience pediatric head trauma. I know that it's hard, but it's so important for people to understand and know, so we really appreciate it. Before we close out today, we will hear remarks from Attorney General Cameron, as his office also declares today as TEN-4 Day.
Hey everybody, this is Daniel. I want to thank you for taking the time to attend this virtual event to raise awareness about the TEN-4 bruising rule. This rule is an essential tool in our fight to end child abuse in the Commonwealth. I'm grateful to Kosair Charities for spearheading this event and for the countless hours the team has dedicated to keeping Kentucky kids safe. For too long, Kentucky's child victimization rate has been too high. And data suggests that the younger a child is, the more likely they are to be abused. According to Kentucky's 2020 Child Maltreatment Report, more than 4% of children in the Commonwealth under age 1 have experienced abuse or neglect. That's 4% too many. These statistics are a sobering reminder of the work that remains to be done. Now, as we work together to address these challenges, we must remember that every Kentucky adult has a role to play in protecting Kentucky kids from abuse and neglect. That role starts with recognizing the signs of abuse and reporting those signs to Child Protective Services. And I would encourage every grown Kentuckian to take the time to attend a training with Kosair Charities. Kentucky's children, especially those who cannot yet articulate their abuse, are counting on us to keep them safe. Addressing child abuse and neglect is a top priority of this office, and we are proud to work alongside some wonderful partners to achieve this goal. So today, in recognition of the important role the TEN-4 rule plays in our shared goal of ending child abuse in our state, as Attorney General of the Commonwealth of Kentucky, I'm issuing a proclamation declaring October 4th as TEN-4 Awareness Day. May it serve as a reminder to each adult, parent, and caregiver to learn about the TEN-4 bruising rule and watch for signs of abuse. As you are on the playground, at school, church, or sporting events, keep an eye on children as they interact with other adults. As we work together, I'm confident that we can and we will keep Kentucky's kids safe.
We are so grateful to our state leaders and to Kosair Charities for placing a priority on the safety of Kentucky's kids. Thank you all for tuning in. And as we've heard today, we can all play a role in child safety. Please visit faceatabuse.org/TEN-4rule to find resources, order materials, and sign up for a training this week. Thank you so much.